Welcome back to the Man Cave for another episode of the ManTFup podcast. I'm Kimmy B.
And Lenny.
This is episode 54. Before we go any further, please like, subscribe, share, and follow. Also, get to commenting, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, YouTube. Absolutely love when you guys engage. Leave us your comments, your thoughts, your insights, any future podcast topics. Again, you guys are why we do this. Len, we've had some really heated discussions as of late about, different legislation, whether it's Florida-based, national-based. But you sent me a really dope TikTok clip. And, anytime you send me a clip, I open it with apprehension. I'm like, I'm either going to love it or I'm going to want to kill you, right? He's either trying to fire me up before we even get started, or, I'm like, okay, Len, this was a good one. And this was a great one. It's Representative Jeff Jackson. And this particular clip was about fake outrage, fake anger amongst members of Congress. Hang on a second. I love what he's saying. I want to turn it up.
So going for President Biden, apparently it's...
TikTok is weird sometimes. Hang on, sorry, Lenny. There we go. Let me go back to it. Here we go. I want to hear from the beginning.
I'm still brand new to Congress. I've only been there 100 days. And I don't know if I'm not supposed to say this out loud, but it's true and important. And if you don't know this, you need to. It's really clear from working there for just a few months that most of the really angry voices in Congress are totally faking it. These people who have built their brands around being perpetually outraged, it's an act. I've seen a bunch of examples. Here's one. I've been in committee meetings that are open to the press and committee meetings that are closed. The same people who act like maniacs during the open meetings are suddenly calm and rational during the closed ones. Why? Because there aren't any cameras in the closed meetings, so their incentives are different. What I've seen is that members of Congress are surrounded by negative incentives. There are rewards for bad behavior. You know what the big one is? Being able to reach you. The big thing that modern media and modern politicians have learned is that if they can keep you angry, they'll hold your attention. And they both want your attention. So if you're a politician and you show certain media outlets that you can help them keep their audience angry, they'll give you their audience. And because so many politicians are willing to play that game, now they're in competition with each other to see how fake angry they can be. So that's real bad. But here's something good. What I love about this, about communicating with you directly, is that the incentives are different. They can be positive. They can be about speaking to you with respect and real information and in a normal tone of voice. Because if I can talk to you directly, I don't have to yell. And if you don't have to yell to be heard, the whole conversation changes. So going forward, when you hear some enraged member of Congress say something absurd, your first question shouldn't be, how can they possibly believe that? It should be, do we think they actually do? Because they probably don't. And for those who want to see politics look less like WWE, I will keep you posted.
I love this guy. And so I went on, you sent me that clip, and I was like, bet, that's facts. I love that. But what I loved even more was that I didn't know initially which side of the aisle he was on, right? Because it was a very straightforward, very kind of candid just assessment of what he's seen in his first 100 days on the Hill. You know what I mean? And I love that. And I kept scrolling, and I probably watched 4 or 5 videos. And every video he delivered, he was talking about, the impending government shutdown that could happen, the looming possibility that could
the budget shutdown.
Come up. Yeah, well, it's a government shutdown. If they can't balance their budget, the government shuts down. Millions of people don't get paychecks. It's bad. Like our army people. Yeah, and obviously, but I feel like it's happening way more frequently now than it ever used to happen. Yeah, but it didn't. Or maybe, I don't know. Did we not hear about it?
Publicize it.
Okay, but I don't know, Len. I think that it's worse. I think that it's gotten worse, or maybe I'm just paying more attention. But the point is, it wasn't until I went to like his bio that I realized he's a Democrat representing North Carolina, right? But I love the fact that I had no idea, again, which side, because in numerous conversations that he's having, and it's just him looking at the camera, engaging with people, he's just very matter-of-factly stating what's going on, what happened on the Hill, different legislation, different things that are being presented. But the fact that you couldn't tell, and he wasn't, and even in this, he didn't call out any particular individual, right? He didn't call out some right-wing person or some left-wing nut job, right? He just said, listen, I've seen it, when there's media in the room versus when there isn't.
Mm-hmm.
And I can appreciate that. And I really do wish that we had more politics like that.
Well, I've said once or twice that, at the top of the food chain, there is no left and right. They all sit around and shake hands.
Mm-hmm.
And it's true. And he just said it. It's pro wrestling when the cameras are there.
Yeah.
And it's kumbaya when they're not.
Yeah.
And it's the truth. And it's distraction. They don't want us to know what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want the American people to really know. Now, I think, we could use a few hundred more like him.
Yeah.
It's truth. I mean, our government is no longer, I think, 100% for the people.
Yeah, of the people, by the people, for the people, definitely not.
No, it's become a career that people are making billions of dollars on.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not what it was meant to be. That's not what it should be. And
well, I think that
it's getting out of hand.
Well, I think that we're starting to see a lot of it even at the state level too, right? Like the way that multiple states have just taken it upon themselves to usher through bills and major legislation without actually presenting it to the people to vote on. We've seen it multiple times here in Florida. And it's funny because we're always so concerned what's happening in Washington. But again, the way that our government was set up was initially so the federal government would make sure that there were, some checks and balances and so that there was equality to some degree amongst the states or parity, right? But that the states really have the final say.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like when the federal government issues federal funding to a state, it goes to your state capital and then your state capital decides how that money gets distributed throughout its
or if your state has policies that aren't
aligned.
Meeting the criteria of that federal funding.
Yeah. Then you don't get the funding.
Then you don't get the funding.
Yeah.
We saw that with Rick Scott and the healthcare.
But again, I think it's important to understand that dynamic. And it's funny to me that so many people will come out and vote in presidential elections, right? Like, but when the midterms come around,
we live in 50 different
we do
sub-countries.
But the problem is nobody, Lenny, and again, we've talked about it repeatedly, and maybe it's because we're such a young nation, people are highly involved in their quote-unquote democratic processes in a lot of other countries, right? When you understand how quickly it can be taken away from you, or when you were under, a dictatorial rule of thumb, or, a fascist regime, or you were ruled by a monarch for, hundreds, not thousands of years, right? And then all of a sudden you get the right to have a say. I think you take it a little bit more seriously. And in this country, while we understand that we fought a revolutionary war in order to get that freedom, we've kind of always
taken it for granted.
Had it, right? Like, and that's why they call it the great experiment, right? Like democracy is it's never worked. Like we know this. It's never worked in the long run, which is a very frightening thing when you really stop down and think about it, right?
Yep. History repeats itself. Be careful.
Well, especially when you're not paying attention. And I take issue with the fact that so many people don't understand how our government really works and moves. Like we've talked about it before, and it's, even your school board, like you have so much power as a person. I like to believe this. You feel a little differently. But I do believe that if collectively we understood how much power, and I think that you're starting to see it in certain groups and certain niches, they're understanding when they get together and they rally the troops, you know what I mean, that you can really implement change, whether that's good for everybody or just good for your group, I can't really comment, but
we're also seeing how little power we have by what you just said. States passing, bills that affect the whole state and every person that lives in that state without having to get any kind of.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing at the presidential level. It's the same thing at the federal level because, they can pass whatever they want without the people voting on it.
Well, yeah, because, indirectly, they're supposed to be acting on our behalf, right? So when I see a guy like Jeff Jackson, like, Obviously, I didn't vote for him. I don't live in North Carolina. I don't know who his constituents are or what they were hoping he was going to go to Capitol Hill.
Yeah, or actually what his
what his platform is. Yeah. And of course, he's in the House, which means he's got to run every 2 years, which is wild to me, while our senators sit there for 6. If you're wondering who the most powerful people in this country are that you can visibly see, as Lenny likes to point out, it's the 100 members of the Senate. And at this point, the Supreme Court of the United States of America, by far. The president, meh.
Well,
he's got 8 years max.
The president can put in a lot of radical things that just can immediately be reversed.
He's got 8 years, though, Len.
Yeah.
Senators are career politicians.
He's got 8 years if he's lucky.
If he's lucky, exactly. Ted Kennedy sat there for how long?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Mitch McConnell's been in office for how long?
Yeah.
So when you're talking about the amount of political capital you can garner over a 20 or 30 year career in Washington, it's a lot. And you're a lot more powerful than any man living at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue.
Yeah.
The White House, by the way.
In case you're wondering.
Yeah.
It's in Washington, D.C.
But I love when people that are there, and that is the beauty of social media, when it's used right, and you have, I don't want to say a force for good, but somebody who just wants to, I think, explain some of the shit. Because I love that he started that off with like, hey, I'm new to this stuff. I've been in there 100 days. He seems like your everyday guy. And that could be part of his shtick, you know what I mean? The rolled up sleeve.
That's his scam.
He's got the little button down on. He's
That's
got the rolled up
game.
sleeves. But at least he's addressing things in a way that I think everybody can process. Like, you turn on some of these news outlets and people are either talking at you, talking down to you, or talking so above the average person's level of comprehension of how government works that it's just falling on deaf ears. So it's only the things, the fire starters, right, that catch our attention. The important
because that's
stuff,
the only thing that's publicized because it's done for ratings.
They talk about budgets. They talk about this stuff. But again, if you've got some MIT fucking finance guy up there trying to explain the federal budget, you know what I mean? To the average person, you're like, I'm trying to do my taxes, bro. Like, you're out here talking about trillions of dollars. Like, get out of here. You know what I mean? If you have somebody that'll come on and just break it down in layman's terms, and be like, hey, this is what's going on. Like, do you realize how many people don't understand the federal government is the largest employer in the country, right? Like, they employ the most people out of everybody. If they shut down, those people don't get paychecks. That includes our military. That includes the U.S. Postal Service. Like, they usually set aside a certain amount of funds to make sure, the really important stuff stays at least functioning.
Yeah.
But that's frightening AF. You know what I mean? And to think that our military personnel can be caught up in all of that is crazy. And the unfortunate part is usually when we make it through these budget cuts, we end up finding out that they gave themselves a raise. And by they, I'm talking about Congress.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't think they've taken a pay cut in a long time.
Yeah. And by all accounts, they don't make crazy money. They don't make crazy money.
$200,000 a year.
Yeah, that's not. I mean, listen.
To the Lenny,
to the average
person.
The average person, they make an absorbent amount of money. They make $200,000 a year. Okay, so
and they don't pay for housing. They've got full pensions, full benefits. Like,
yes, they make that for life.
For life.
Yes, I get it. But how do they become multimillionaires? It's not off the $200,000.
Yeah, and that's a great point.
Okay,
that's something that a lot of us, and not every single one of them does, and some are independently wealthy before they ever even get, because that's the other thing that we've discussed at length on this podcast, is how do you even become, how does regular Joe even become a U.S. Senator in 2023? The kind of money, the kind of political capital you have to have in order to get one of those coveted seats is so next level.
I'd like to know how he got there.
Jackson?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. But I hate to say it, Congress is like, the House of Representatives is very different than the U.S. Senate. You know what I mean? In the sense of getting there. Like, I don't think they need nearly the same amount of money. I mean, we got Rubio and Rick Scott that are our, that are to U.S. senators. And that's 26 million people that they represent, or however. I think, are we at 26 million now? I think we're somewhere around there. But we have probably how many members of the House of Representatives do we have?
A lot.
Yeah,
Was there 436 total?
Yeah, something like that. We got a good chunk of them too, because we have one of the
Big
most
state,
populous
yeah.
states, and that's how they determine how many reps you have. And that changes. So as more people move here, we get more members in the House. But it's not quite as expensive, but it still takes money and capital. However, I will say this: he also was under the age, or looks under the age of 100, which is great, because that's the other thing. If you continue to have people that are so disconnected, they're independently wealthy, they've been in Washington for decades, and if they weren't doing this, they'd be retired, on full benefits. Like, how do you know what the average American going through?
This goes back to the simplicity that I was talking about with schools. There's simplicity that can be had in our government too. And it's basically just fixing the few problems that keep these people where they are and keep them in power. And, if the people really want to be governed by the people, they have to start looking outside of the rhetoric that's caused.
But they also have to want to be a part of the process.
Yeah.
They also have to want, and by a part of the process, I'm not just talking about going out and voting and doing your due diligence and reading up on the people that are running in your community and that are on your, on your state ballot, or that are on the national ballot. I'm talking about actually being engaged and wanting to be a part of, your party, wanting to run yourself, whether that's for city council, whether that's as a commissioner, whether that's as a, a state level member of Congress,
Yeah.
national, federal level.
I'd like to see, a house filled with Jeff Jacksons.
Yeah.
And there's got to be people that are level-headed and, middle ground oriented and understand that you have to give a little to get a little. Mm-hmm. I mean, there has to be people out there that understand that and how it works. And right now, all it is a tennis match. You have one half of Congress or one half of the Senate hitting the ball across to the other half of the Senate, who are hitting it back, and they're all hinging on one or two people to make the difference. Mm-hmm. And the way they get that one or two people to make the difference is sliding them the stock that's...
But I also don't understand the whole process of lumping all of this shit together. Like, that's the other thing that has become more and more...
You mean on the bills?
Obvious, yeah. Like,
yes.
Well,
that's how they get.
Why do we have a green energy deal that also has to do with veteran care, that also has to do with unemployment, that also has to do with what, like?
So that's their interpretation of give and take. So okay, you want to get this bill passed? No problem. We'll put this on the tail end of it, so that this will get funded also. So this one congressman might feel, oh, well, I'm very staunch on this, and he's the deciding vote. Well, what is it that you need? Okay, we'll put that in the tail end of this bill, and it'll go through.
Yeah, but the two have but it's annoying because as a constituent, as a person who wants it to be about the issues and the things that we care about, that makes no sense to me. Last election, I think it was the last national election that we had, so presidential election, I feel like there was a bill on the Florida ballot that had to do with vaping and casinos. Do you know the bill I'm talking? Like, do you remember the bill that I'm talking about? Like, but the two things were so unrelated. And I'm going, so if I want more casinos to be able to be built, but I don't want to have to sit in a casino where they're like, do you understand what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Like, or I don't care about vaping, but I care completely. And it was just so foolish to me. And you're going, these two things have nothing to do with each other. But if I vote yes for one, I'm voting no for the other. And if I vote no for one, I'm voting yes for, like. And then on top of that, the way that they word things, if you don't read the entire bill properly, there's one word in there that changes your yes to an actual no and your no to an actual yes. And it's like, stop trying to get over on people. Like, stop trying to get over on people. And that is why, when you do radio or you do media, and it is on us to kind of call some of these things out and I think to bring it to people's attention. But then there's the folks who walk in to go vote and literally only check the box for the president.
Yeah,
and then
well,
leave.
it's like I told you in the last governor election, people voted on one thing.
Mm-hmm.
They voted on one topic.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't care about anything else.
I mean, I cared,
But
but yeah, I get it.
But 99% of the people voted pro-choice, pro-life.
Mm-hmm.
That's how they voted.
Yeah.
So when you can take a topic and throw it out into the system
Mm-hmm.
and control every gubernatorial election in the country.
Mm-hmm.
Every gubernatorial election in the country was based on that at this last election.
But the scarier part about that is this last election had a ton of judges on the ballot as well. And if you don't, like, you can roll your eyes at me, but our judiciary was completely reshaped during the last presidential administration.
Yeah.
Like, when I say completely reshaped, I'm talking about a quarter of our federal judges were appointed by Mitch McConnell, President Trump, and that sitting Senate.
Yeah.
A quarter. And they intentionally chose judges that were under the age of 50, and these are lifetime appointments. And they even encouraged some sitting judges to resign early so that they could appoint these younger judges to kind of, take over and man the post for a longer period of time while they had the power to do so. And it doesn't matter sometimes what legislation gets pushed through. You could be super excited in 4 years because all of a sudden now the governor's house is your guy or your girl, and so is the House of Representatives, and so is the Senate. But guess what? All of those judges get to sit there and play ping pong with every bill, with every piece of legislation. All you have to do is submit an appeal, is file, an injunction, is basically contest it, and now it gets caught up in the courts. So again, not understanding how our political processes work, how our government functions, is really detrimental to us as a society. And I feel like, that podcast that we talked about a few episodes ago, soft times make for, that one. Mm-hmm. If we go back to that era that we were discussing, like probably up until, I want to say, the 60s, people took voting very seriously. And I will say this, disenfranchised or historically disenfranchised communities took it even more serious. Mm-hmm. And immigrants took it even more serious, right? Like when you got the ability to go in there and cast your ballot, like that was an honor and a privilege, right? So again, to the Americans who have always been here and kind of always had this at their fingertips, maybe folks got a little disenfranchised. But to the people who didn't always have it, to the people who fought hard, who worked hard for it, who came here from other places because of democracy.
Yeah, they believed it.
They believed it and they valued it. And I don't know when that disconnect started to happen, but I mean, it's across the board at this point. People have, again, become just disenfranchised with the entire system. And it doesn't help when you're out here, perpetuating election theft or this or that, or, the ballots are rigged, like just all the craziness.
The government is about money. Those positions and those bills and those things that are passed in this country are all about money. Our government is run by...
Every government is. So you're never going to get an altruistic government, right? And then you cannot have a lawless, ungoverned society. None of that works. So you got to find a middle. You got to find a middle ground.
You got to try and find a middle ground, but it's with the advent of social media and all of that, it makes it very difficult because these people who clearly had a voice prior to social media now have a megaphone in the ear of people. And you have, the whole scandal that's going on with the national news, with CNN and with Fox. And, we were clearly told what to say. We were told to say this. If we didn't say this, we were fired. That's not news. That's not reality. That's someone telling someone to tell the people.
But I've discussed this though. And why part of that is though, because people want to hear what they want to hear. So when you start monetizing, the news was never the whole deal with news was given to these people for free, right? They were given these outlets under the guise of report the facts, right? You're doing a public service. It's why every major media company still has to do PSAs. Like we still have to issue PSAs. We have to do public service programming. Like we have an hour every week that is supposed to be dedicated to community issues. It's supposed to be a place for organizations, for people in your community to come in and voice their concerns, to discuss, things that are impacting, those around them. And it's mandatory. But again, that was part of the trade-off where we're going to give you this very powerful platform, but you have to make sure you continue to use it for good and you have to serve the people. But then obviously money talks, bullshit walks. I've been in that situation and I've told you that. And, where you get the email that comes down, hey, we know this happened, but this is the company's stance on it. You can address it in this way, but then keep it moving.
But that's not the way the news uses.
No! It's shitty.
That's not.
It's really shitty.
But that's so how do you get your?
And I'm not a news program.
How do you get out to the people? I mean, I know two.
But you know why they
elderly
do that,
couples. One of them is glued to CNN, and one of them is glued to Fox.
But you know why though? Because those people want to hear the narrative that they want to hear. So like when I'm told, so
they don't want to hear the truth.
So when I told you when I came to General Market Radio, which had a much broader, more evenly split, demographic or audience, the guidelines that I was given for, particularly sensitive community topics, were very different than when I was on a hip hop radio station that was a heritage brand in our market, right? But again, I told you that, but there was, a blessing and a curse, right? It was frustrating to not be able to voice my full opinion or my thoughts on something or be passionate about it because again, I don't do news talk. I'm not in there just to give you the facts. What we do is a little bit more, hey, this is what happened and this is how we feel about it. And how do you feel about it? Call us up, engage, right? We have more of that kind of, it's more of a
give and take
conversation as opposed to just, hey, these are the facts. But again, I told you when I was on the hip hop side of things, when it came to, the Trayvon Martin situation, 99% of the people that we were talking to felt the same way about that situation, right? I told you it wasn't until I came over to the other side where I started to hear a completely different spin on that situation. And I was mind blown, right? But it gave me a great perspective moving forward and a better understanding like, okay, we don't all think the same. And I know that sounds very naive, but most of us operate and most of us move in circles with like-minded individuals, right? Like that's just the nature of society. You gravitate towards people who most oftentimes are interested in the same things you are. Every once in a while, you'll find the odd couple.
Yeah.
Lenny and I, that just enjoy arguing about things.
Clearly, we have to keep a few feet between us.
Yeah, it's all good though. But you know what I'm saying? So that to me was beneficial, but I started to get a lot more. I was never, ever, ever told to be aware of how I was presenting a situation when I was on a hip hop station. When I came over to the general market side of things, it was like, we're not really going to get into the race stuff. We're not really going to get into this. People come to you as an outlet. People come to you as an escape, right? So it was just ironic to me. And I won't disagree with the fact that, it's almost like the shut up and dribble, right? When you watch sports, some people don't want to hear the political views of their favorite athletes, right? They're like, but it's like, at the end of the day, these are people that are in a position of power and they have an obligation to their community. And if they decide to take that on, you're not going to stop, you're not going to stop them from using their platform how they see fit. And we've seen that across the board, right? So I understand when you say that this is now a national conversation between CNN and Fox. That comes, again, from the higher-ups, and that is a money thing. That's a money thing. That's a revenue-based, hey, you're going to lose listeners.
Yeah.
Like I told you, first episode in here, the Trump presidency, the night he won, I had posted a couple things on my Facebook page. Nothing crazy. I think I told you, the people were saying, oh, the polls lied. And I was like, the polls didn't lie. Your friends lied. Like, they didn't want to tell you, or people weren't being honest. And that's, that's one thing. And then I think I made a comment about whoever the third party person that was running, they had like 3% of the vote, and that's what Hillary ended up losing by. And I was like, you asshat, like what the like. And my general manager at the time screenshot those posts on my personal Facebook account, sent them to my program director, so like my direct boss, and was like, she's going to alienate her audience.
See, one of the things that's going on, I feel, with all of this rhetoric that we're being fed on CNN and Fox and everywhere else, social media, is that it's preventing the people from communicating with each other, which is why we started this podcast, was to find some middle ground. And if everybody in this country that in some way, shape, or form is disgruntled with the government, no matter what it be, whether you're scared they're going to take your guns, whether you don't like what their policy is here, whether you don't like this, or whether you're having trouble making ends meet, whatever the case may be, if every one of those people in this country that had an issue, which probably equates to about 99% of the country, because that's why we have a 1%er thing right now. So if those 99% of the people could literally just talk to each other, we could all raise our hands like good little students, okay, across this whole entire country and go, hey, we're the 300 million people that are tired of this shit, and we want to vote on this.
Yeah.
We want to change the way our government is. We want to take on, term limits, and we want to take
the lobby,
and we want to take lobbying out of our government. Period. All we have to do is raise our hands. There's 300 million of us. But they're preventing us from raising our hands because they don't want me talking to you. They don't want me talking to her. They don't want me talking to Nestor. So they put these little tiny barricades between us repeatedly. But everybody in that 99% is getting fucked. Everybody. So, if you really want to make change, you really want to do something, let's figure out a way to get together. Let's figure out a way to take the government back for the people, because that's what it needs to be. 99% of the people don't even know the Fed is a private company. Everybody hears the Fed. It's the Fed raising rates. It's a private fucking company. It's not the federal government. Federal government doesn't own the Fed. They have some influence in it, but it's predominantly banks. People don't know that.
Yeah.
They have no fucking clue. So you want to take the government back? Take the money out of the politicians' pockets, take the term limits off the table, and let's make a difference. Let's elect Jeff Jackson.
I'm telling you.
Let's find all the Jeff Jacksons in this country. Listen, I'll put my hat in the ring for whatever.
I think I'm gonna vote for Jeff. I love you, Len. You're a little too volatile for me. Sorry.
Well, Jeff's in North Carolina, so see ya.
What? No, Jeff, I'm voting Jeff for president, buddy.
Oh, that's fine.
Jeff for president.
I'll just take the state. That's fine.
Yeah, state senate. All right. Well, we're sending Lenny to Tallahassee and see what he can get done.
That's the bottom line.
But again, I think that it starts earlier on, though. When we talk about education, when we talk about the things that we're focused on, you're worried about taking out race or certain things from history, and it's like, how about you teach people how our government
works? But even those things, if we could, as the 99% of the people in this country, come together to change what's really the issue in our country.
But Lenny, if you don't know how it works,
if you can't, it's basic. It's basic. The government is not that complicated.
I get it, but you just said that 80% of the people don't know that the Fed is private. So this is what I'm saying to you. And the average American reads at a 6th grade level. I think that was the last thing you hit me with.
That's just when you write marketing, that's what you're supposed to write it for.
Okay, well so you think that these people understand? No, so they
but you know what they understand, Kimmy? They understand that they're disgruntled over the way the government's being run in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, but what you're saying right now sounds like January 6th. That doesn't get us anywhere.
No.
That doesn't get us anywhere. That's electing people. It's people actually caring. So you can sit here and talk all the shit you want, Len, but
we don't have to get out there and
Len, you could be a councilman right now, though. You could
Yeah.
have easily already thrown your name in the hat. So instead, you're sitting on this couch and we have these conversations. But it's the people that have good ideas. It's the people that are of sound mind. It's the people that are a part of the 99%, but can see a way out, that do need to take an active role and participate in government, not just have a podcast.
yeah. Well, this is just my stepping off point.
Okay.
Listen, if you believe what I'm telling you about the 300 million people in this country, that if we all come together, we can change the way our government is, then put it in the comments. Share this video.
Yeah, but we've said that, though, like, repeatedly.
Yeah,
and sometimes you decide to, like, shit on me when I say it. But it's like, we do have the power. Like,
we
they work for us.
we don't have the power currently.
And
the reason we
don't take them out.
Yes, but we
Like-
don't have the power currently because they keep us from talking to each other. They keep us from being on the same page.
No, but then we also sit here. They don't keep anybody from doing that, because you had no problem reaching out to me. Like, it's not about the they. We have to stop placing the blame on other people. Like, you just saw it. Like, here's a man that sits on that works on Capitol Hill that can sit here and is addressing his 2 million followers on TikTok, which I love that he's got that kind of presence, and some of his videos are hella viral. That makes me excited. And hopefully he's engaging younger people, because honestly, they're the future. We don't need a bunch
Send
of
him a message
80-year-olds.
because I think he reads them.
We don't need a bunch of 80-year-olds.
Tell him when I'm on the ManTFup.
I love it. No problem. Let's do it. I'll do it. But my point is, we have to stop blaming it on the they. Like, it's funny to me. This podcast actually brings up conversations. I told you I had 2 over the Mother's Day weekend with people that have watched clips and are either, how do you do it or whatever, but they're watching. You know what I mean? You shared a comment with me about somebody who happened to see a barcode on your truck, and it took him to the podcast, and he ended up watching, one of the clips, and it's like, I'm with Len on this. He wants for simpler times. I don't care whose side you choose, because if you sat there and watched any of it, you heard 2 sides.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying? You heard 2 people that have a relationship outside of this that is fully functioning. I have so much love for Len and so much respect for him as a businessman and as a father and all of those things. And we can have these conversations. And then we have these conversations, and hopefully we go out and we have these conversations with other people. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And you engage them. And my biggest issue is, when I talk to people, obviously, you know how I feel about certain social things and cultural things. But when it comes to our government, I really do. My only message is that we have the power.
Let me ask you a question on the social and all of those things. Mm-hmm. Do you think that if we had a Senate and a Congress filled with Jeff Jacksons, that those issues would be as hot of a topic, or would they get addressed? Would they get mediated out, figured out? Would there be some resolution to some of this stuff? Because they don't want to fix any of these problems. It's been proven.
What should the government really be weighing in on, though? Like, really and truthfully, what should the government have its hand in?
What should it have its hand in? It's difficult to pull the government's hand back out. But Roe v. Wade should have never been overturned. Mm-hmm. That there's no reason that should have ever been overturned. Mm-hmm. It was decided. What the generation didn't change.
No, and it was decided by a predominantly conservative court.
Yes, and a predominantly conservative society in the 70s. Mm-hmm. Okay, this and
it was based on fact, like what they perceived as fact.
Whatever the case may be, they're going to have to make decisions. They're going to have, but there should be, when you have states that are pushing certain agendas, the government should step in and say, hey, they still haven't decriminalized marijuana, even though it's legal in 38 or 39 states.
Yeah. They
haven't decriminalized it. Why? That's a topic that the government should just, what are you fighting for? What are you continuing that fight for? What are you spending tax dollars on when clearly 39 of the 50 states say it's okay? Why are you fighting it?
Well, because they're still, I'm sure, getting lobbied. I don't know that they're spending tax dollars on it, but they're certainly making
Oh, they're spending tax dollars on regulating it and fighting it in these other states and
But they're also continuing to collect money from massive lobby groups, right? That are still pushing to get it legalized in other places.
The point is, these are the things that the government needs to step in on. I mean, should the whole entire, public school system in the United States be similar? Probably.
Yeah.
Should every school get the same benefits that other schools get?
1,000%.
Okay, that's a government thing. But
again, it's a government thing. But it's a government thing that then has been given to the state. So that's that whole conversation. But you have the right to voice your opinion on those things now instead of waiting. So it's because you're not going to
make changes.
But you're not going to win that battle. Like the federal government being too big, nobody's ever going to agree with that.
What'd you say? There's 26 million people in the state?
Something like that, yeah.
If 25 million of them felt the way you do about the bill that was passed in Florida, it wouldn't change it.
What do you mean?
Just what I said. If 25 million people felt the same way about HB, whatever it is, that you do, it wouldn't change the bill because we didn't vote on it.
No, facts.
Okay? So this is a place where government,
I know this.
where federal government should be in. The school system should be federally the same. If you go to school in Iowa or you go to school in South Miami, you should be getting the same education. It shouldn't be based,
But it's not. It's based on property taxes, and we know this. Like that's how it's.
No, but it's based. The schools are based on.
Schools are funded on property tax.
Yes, but
then they get federal funding that comes to the state, and the state gets to decide who gets what.
Yes,
but that's because you have a group of Americans who don't want federal overreach. They don't want the man extending his hand out too far, but then you have a state. But if you don't keep your state government in check,
meanwhile, the man is reaching out and grabbing all our money and grabbing all our guns.
Yeah, but what is our state doing? Like this is the problem, though, Len. Like this is why I say I will always go back to understanding how your government works because it makes sense to you and I, but to the average person, they're simply blaming Washington. Right?
Yeah.
And it's like, so the folks that are mad about gun control in Florida, that's not even a federal thing. That's a Florida thing. The man who just rolled back, the whole long gun bill that got passed in the immediate aftermath of Stoneman Douglas, that was a Florida thing. That wasn't a federally passed mandate. That was a Florida mandate that was put in place by Governor Ron DeSantis, who just rolled it back, right? So, but if you have this fight with people, you have people in California using this. And it's like, California, this has nothing to do with you. This is a Florida thing, right?
Not to mention everybody's moving out of California.
They're not all moving out of California. Still plenty of people in California.
Pretty quickly.
No, they're not. Oh, my God. You're okay, Fox and CNN. Like, no, they're really not, though. It's really not that significant of an amount of people. That's like saying everybody's leaving New York. They're really not.
Good amount.
No, they're not a good. What is a good amount? There's still more people in those states than we have in Florida. Yes.
New York?
New York,
more people than Florida.
California, Texas, top 3 most populous states.
Sure. I'm not so sure about that.
There's 15 million people in like Manhattan alone, like 8 million in New York City, or like 8 million in Manhattan and like 15 million in the surrounding area. Like, I know it's definitely California, Texas.
I know California.
Florida may be 3rd, but New York is like 4th.
States by
population.
I'm just curious on this one.
But this whole narrative of everybody's leaving, no, they're not. And guess what? Half the people have residency here. Why? If they're moving to Florida. They're not giving up their places in New York. They're moving here for residency for tax purposes. Period.
We're 3rd.
Okay.
California's 1.
Texas
which is
2.
Clear. Texas is 2.
We're 3rd.
We're 3rd.
Who's 4th?
New York. Yeah.
Okay.
But New York used to be ahead of us. Where did all those New Yorkers go?
Oh, my God. I know. Nestor, first of all, you're off camera and off mic. Secondly, I'm aware of it, but you guys act like literally there's nobody left in New York. It's a fucking
it's not
lie.
That there's nobody left
there.
No,
but like it's not. It's really not this. Like you asked, like it's the fucking migration from Ireland to the Americas. Like after the potato famine.
Let me ask you a question. If 100,000 people move out of a state, that you wouldn't consider that a migration, or or
Lenny, it wasn't
or a thing?
100,000. It was more like 25 or 30,000 people. No, yes, that's how many turned in their licenses. And again, they did it for tax purposes.
Okay.
Literally like, because guess
California?
why? Tax purposes.
Okay.
Who did we got Scott Baio, super excited about
they
that.
didn't move
And
to-
do you know why else? Because of never mind. I'm
They
not
didn't
going to
move
fight.
to
We were having a
Tennessee.
really good because
just-
you have to pay state tax in Tennessee and
No,
you don't pay.
Not in Tennessee.
Are you sure about that?
I'm positive. There's no state income tax in Tennessee.
Okay, well, I don't know if I had to choose between Tennessee and Florida.
Yeah.
If I had to choose between, Nashville and fucking Miami, I'm probably coming to Miami. But whatever.
that's another thing that people don't understand: the tax base and where that money goes. That's understanding government and understanding how government spends your money and where your money goes. I mean, I'm still pissed that we have a Florida lottery and we have shitty
Facts.
schools.
But again, that's got nothing to do with the federal government. That's the state of Florida.
Yes.
So be mad at the state of Florida. And again, that is something that you are an active participant in. So Lenny is very right, but I also want to say we need to get more engaged. And that means people need to understand how the government actually works. And that is something that I think they stopped teaching people when folks started voting in mass. You know what I mean? It's one thing when you have a more limited part of the population that's exercising their right to be involved in government. As more people start doing it, though, it's like, hold on. No, wait a minute. We don't need all of these people understanding how this system works coming in here and putting their hand up in the mix. So let's stop making sure that people know how it works. Like, hence the reason why if you talk to somebody who's 80 years old, ask them how many elections they voted in. I guarantee you they'll tell you every single presidential election since they were able to vote. And I bet you they vote in all of their community elections too.
Probably.
Do you know what I mean? Or I would say a good amount of them. Maybe not
They
all of
started
them.
when they were 60 voting in the local ones.
When they were 60?
Yeah, because they had nothing else to fucking do.
No, they voted before.
They retired and
No, because they were small business owners and they needed, the commissioner to vote their way. Like, you understand, if you understand how the game is played, you understand the power that comes with being actively involved and voting for people and having your guy in the seat. And that's not just in Washington and it's not just in Tallahassee. That's right here in Pembroke Pines.
Yeah,
It's right here in
depends on the
Hollywood.
level.
It's right here in, like, if you know the right guy and you need a permit, you know what I'm saying? And you were campaigning for him, that might work in your favor. We've got a whole thing happening right now in Cayocho. There's a commissioner in Miami that's being dragged by all of these business owners very publicly, saying that he retaliated against all of them. He's been sending fire marshal in to shut them down because they hosted events for his opponents during the last, election. And but again,
That's a problem.
He's being blasted, and I love it because these people understand if we collectively come together.
yeah, but he's still there.
We
He's
have the
still getting
power.
it.
No, but he's
Yeah.
he's going to be out. Like, it's next level. I mean,
Yeah, well, that's like DeSantis going after Disney, but whatever, same thing.
okay, that's a whole other podcast. But yeah,
no,
so
but it's the same abuse of power. I mean, our politicians stopped being for the people and started being for themselves. And that's really where we're at. That's really where we're at. There's no I would bet there's a handful of politicians in this country that are 100% for the people.
But that means that
maybe a little more than a
new wave of people needs to get involved in politics. Like, that's the other thing. So how do you encourage?
But you mentioned before, the bar to become a politician is set so high because of the influence and money they have. So it's very hard for someone like me to become a politician.
But you do know, though, historically, from a Democratic perspective, it's usually a lot more grassroots. Like, it's usually because it's the working man. Obviously, you had unions and things like that. But what I'm saying
historically, the Democratic Party controlled the unions and told them how to vote. When I was 18 years old, my dad.
But all those people pay dues. Like, all of those people.
When I was 18 years old, my dad took me down to the local engineering union. Local
999, whatever. Yeah.
Enrolled me in it. He was an operating engineer from the 50s. So he enrolls me in the operating engineers, and I sit down at the table at the intake meeting, and they're like, "Well, what are you, Democrat or Republican?" I'm like, I'm a Republican. Not anymore. That was right.
Did you change your? No, you didn't, because you're still a registered
No,
Republican.
but I'm also not in the union. I lasted 5 minutes in there.
Okay. The people that buy in, buy in. But what I'm saying,
the point is, it's control again.
I get it, but you're missing I'm talking about for the average person that wants to get into it.
Yes.
The average working man who just wants to make a difference. That's usually the route you're taking, because from a financial standpoint, like, just, again, historically, these are broad-based, kind of stereotypes of the parties in this country. Republicans, finance, right? Like, these are the guys that are talking taxes. These are business owners. These are people who are looking at the government. How am I going to be able to protect my wealth? How am I going to be able to keep my business going, my employees employed, all of those things, right? And the Democratic Party on the other side was a lot of times the worker bees, right? It was the man. So when you have the unions fighting, it was for fair wages, it was for protection, it was for all of these things, right? I'm not saying that the government wasn't involved. I'm not saying it wasn't controlled by mobsters. I'm not saying any of that. What I'm telling you is, you'll see more Joe Schmoes back in the day running as Democrats than you would, have seen
as Republicans.
Brooks Brothers wearing Republicans. That's changing to some degree with the new...
Yeah, because the parties have totally switched.
Do you know what I'm saying? Like, so, yeah, you have these, especially the people on the far right, you've got a lot more, I don't want to say randos, but, they're just...
You have to pander to the masses, and the masses have leaned that way.
But clearly, I don't know how much money some of these people that have been elected had. The parties are still generating revenue, right? So the Democratic Party has money to back new candidates. Just nobody is putting themselves forward that's actually got the shit that makes them worthy of being elected. That's a problem. You know what I mean? And
but do you think it's nobody putting themselves forward or nobody being allowed to put forward? The to become the Democratic nominee.
For what?
For
president?
Yeah.
I'm not talking about for president. I'm talking about locally. This is how you get there. You have to make your move. Obama didn't start off as a fucking senator. This fucker's been was in Chicago running for all kinds of things. He was on the scene.
So what are you saying? I should run for the Senate?
I'm saying, get involved. Just be involved. Be involved. Like, that's...
Isn't Congress easier than the Senate?
Yes.
I'll start in Congress.
There's more seats in Congress.
Yeah, I'll start in Congress.
And then obviously, and that's even at the state level.
Who would I go up against in this area?
There's a lot of people in this area.
Wasserman.
Yeah. She's
pretty
career. She's career politics.
She's pretty incumbent.
Yeah. She's pretty dialed in. But I mean, there's opportunities, but it's like even just getting a spot at the table, being in the room, having the conversations, like having a better understanding of how all of this shit works and
me
moves.
In Washington?
Yeah, Len, I could for sure. Like, you can schmooze with the best of them, and I don't mean that in a negative way, but it's getting people in there, like you said. Like, we're missing the men and the women that can sit at the table with the cookies on the left and the cookies on the right, and get them to have a steak, drink a glass of wine, and walk away from the table with an actual deal done, right? Like, we're missing the middleman. We're missing the people in the middle. We're missing the Jeff Jacksons.
We're missing the deal makers.
We used to have them. There were people that understood give and take. Last thing I'm going to say, and it reminds me of the backpack situation in Broward, right? I told you as soon as we walked in today, I was like, this is blowing my mind. Broward County School Board mandated that all Broward County public school students would have to use clear backpacks.
So they listen to the podcast.
Moving forward, right? Now, we've obviously had many conversations about things, we think, and you in particular as a parent, the government, state, local, federal could do to make our schools safer. But basically, in my opinion, any acknowledgement that we have a situation at hand and it needs to be addressed is a step in the right direction. So I posted a poll on my Instagram, on my station's Instagram. What do you think of this mandate of clear backpacks? Finally, one of the options was like, it's not enough. The other one was good start, but there's still work to be done. And then obviously you could kind of add your own comment. Bro, another one of my coworkers did like a reel about it. And she's like, I just want to know your feelings on it. 300 comments later, these people are fighting in the comments. And it was like, it was either, we need gun reform, or that shit's not going to work. There was like no, hey,
we got to start somewhere.
None of that. None of that. It was like, this is stupid. And it was either this is stupid because we need gun reform, or this is stupid because that's not, that's not going to stop anything. Like, so, you get the people who are just out here that just want guns taken away were like, that no. And then the people who love their guns were like, no. And I'm like, guys, I don't want to say it's something, and obviously we don't want to stop here, but can we acknowledge that this is at least something? Like, and that's the same thing in Washington. Like, we had people before that understood it's about the give and the take. And now when people give anything, their base is like, what the fuck, you pussy? You know what I'm saying? It's like, the Obama administration, he ran on he was a moderate Democrat when he ran the first time, right? Like, I know you voted for him and you're a pretty,
right-leaning.
Yeah.
Right-leaning.
So if you're voting for a
guy.
Democrat, you've got to know he's got your best interest at heart with taxes, with certain, especially when it comes to finance
I
stuff.
vote on different reasons. I didn't vote on I voted on the fact that the previous president drove our shit into the ground. I voted on the fact that I couldn't make a living. That's what I voted on.
Yeah.
And how could you be worse? You couldn't be worse, and you clearly have things that listen, I think he did a great job at getting the economy back on track. There's plenty of things that he said he was going to do he didn't do. There was plenty of things that he did that might not have been the best. But the bottom line is, in 2008, I couldn't feed my kids, and in 2016, I could. That's all I care about.
Yep.
It's that, and you can look at it however you want. Obamacare was a flop. Things, there's a lot of different things.
But shouldn't people be able to afford health care? Like, shouldn't people in this country have access?
Absolutely. But, the biggest problem with that stuff is everybody goes to, it's socialism. It's socialism. Well, listen, there's a lot of things that the government controls. And the reason they don't control health care is because health care controls them.
Well, can I tell you something? Somebody actually made the best point on the planet to me. And it was, we were talking about foreign governments or whatever. And they said there's a reason why they offer, why they have so many banned substances in the EU. Like things that we allow in our food, like toxins and pesticides and all this stuff. They said because they pay for healthcare. They don't want a sick, fat, unhealthy population because they're the ones footing the bill for it.
Yes.
Right? They said, so if you're wondering why there's 13 to 1,400 banned substances, including red dye this and blue dye that and all of this stuff that you can find
fluoride in your water.
In our cereal that we literally put at the aisle and market to our children, you know what I mean, here in this country. And I was like, I had never really thought about it that way. Again, may seem naive, may seem dingy, but when it was put to me that way, I was like, holy
it's fixing
shit.
the problem.
Yeah.
There's no money in fixing the problem.
In this country.
Yes. Like I said,
yeah.
Healthcare is not run by the government because the government is run by healthcare. And that's just the way it is.
And so is the food industry and so
everything. They own all of it.
Dairy.
They own all of it.
Poultry, all of it. So
everything.
Anyway, good conversation, Len. High five. Yeah. I'm not sure that we came to a resolution, but we definitely need more Jeff Jacksons. We definitely need more middlemen and middlewomen. We need more deal makers. And I think we need more transparency. Like, I like Jeff because he's kind of just like, hey, I'm not sure if I'm supposed to say this or not, but listen, this is what's going on. And I think the more people understand how this shit works, how intricate it is, but still simple, right? Like, at the end of the day, these fuckers all work for us. But if we don't hold them accountable, if we as the 300 million don't, like you said, collectively raise our hand and say enough is enough, and really start exercising our right to check these mofos, then it's going to stay the same. And it stays the same because we just keep running in circles and we keep hitting them with the they. That's why I said, like, that they conversation bothers me. I know DJ Khaled has made millions of dollars out of it, but at some point in time, you have to stop blaming them for keeping us divided, and you have to start bridging the gap.
Sure. And yes, you do. But it's difficult when you're fighting, it's like trying to climb up a waterfall. When you're getting bombarded by CNN, Fox, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, you're getting bombarded. It's like trying to free climb a waterfall. That's what keeps most people down. If you think about it that way, think about what it would be like to climb up a 60-foot waterfall with the water coming down.
Every day when I sit on this couch. With
Got him.
so I know exactly what that feels
Exactly.
like.
And you
But guess
and what happens?
We shall overcome.
You never reach the top.
What are you talking about? The comments say otherwise, Lenny, and I'm still here to live to see another day. That being said,
you only read the comments on TikTok.
that
You
was
don't read
episode. Oh no, trust me, I read them on YouTube. I also know our demographic on YouTube. I read them on the gram when they're there. There's not as many. No.
All right.
YouTube is Team Lenny. TikTok tends to be a little more Team Kimmy B. It's all good. Don't worry about it. It's not about winning or losing, though, so long as they're having the conversations. That's all that's important. But anyway, please like, subscribe, share, follow ManTFup, ManTFup TV, ManTFup Garage. We're absolutely everywhere. Are there any other ones? ManTFup, ManTFup TV,
ManTFup podcast.
ManTFup podcast. Like I said, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, all of that. Also, you can get the podcast any and everywhere that they have podcasts. And by that, I mean any and everywhere. So
Yep.
do that. All right. We'll see you next time.
Peace.